My name's Mary Gathergood. I'm a retired NHS mental health therapist and a holistic life coach. After 50 years of being in practice, I'm retiring from seeing clients. And I have a very large amount of transformational and helpful tools and practice that I've been using all these years. And I'd love for them to be put to good use. So I'm offering them to any therapist, life coaches, counselors, anybody out there who thinks they might be able to use these with clients. And I should be very happy to see them being used by other people because they have helped many people in the past and they could go on helping many people. Thank you.
So this meeting is being recorded.
Just for the recording, this is our first session with Emma Mary, sharing some tools that she's learned over many years of practice. And there'll be 3 little things that we'll trial today. And we've checked in and we're kind of ready to start, I think, unless there's anything else.
I know. You were going to mention something.
Yes, Emma's offering this through the gift economy. If you find it really valuable and you're able to do so, she'd welcome a donation, but it's by no means obligatory. It's just, that's part of the gift economy.
Okay, thanks, Matt. Matthew is our time watcher, so if me or anybody else is rabbiting on a bit too much, Matthew has carte blanche to come in and tell us.
That's not to just stop and feel that you've gone on too long. It's just to sort of bottom line and keep us on focus. And I'll only do it very politely and only if we're really getting off time.
And he's allowed to do it with me as well, because I can rabbit for England. So we're going to introduce our first topic. So I think Matt is going to share the screen and put up,
yes.
Perfect, absolutely perfect. Okay, so this is, it comes in a piece of paper, which I take with me when I see clients or when I run groups. It's always where I start. And it's called, I've called it Holistic Map 1. And the way it works is, and this time, often when we introduce topics, we're going to ask for a volunteer to be the would-be client, and I ask them questions and then I demonstrate how I would be working with someone. But I'm going to use myself as a client this time because it's kind of easier where we start. So in this map, what I say is, okay, as you can see, you sit in the middle, or I sit in the middle. Now, I've always said that it's like having 4 limbs. We've got a mind, which I wave my right hand in the air. We've got a body and I wave my right leg. And then we have feelings and I wave my left leg. And then we have a spirit and I wave my left arm. So what I say is that makes up a whole person. If any one of these I'm not having a good relationship with, or I'm denying, or I'm not listening to, I start to get a little bit contracted and twisted, and I'm not being my whole self. Oh, and the one thing I did want to say is I have written a book called Becoming Whole, where a lot of these techniques are in it. And it's available from Amazon. And I know that's naughty, and I know it shouldn't be Amazon anymore, but I wrote it some years ago and I haven't got myself organized as to where else it's available from. If you don't use Amazon, you can write to me and I'll post it to you. What I ask people is, what is your relationship with each of these 4? So let's start with mind. And what I say is, put a little cross on the paper, how close to the you that your relationship is. So if my relationship with my mind is incredibly good, I'll put a little cross just outside the circle saying you. If my relationship with my mind is pretty bad, I'll put the cross at the very top end. Yes, thanks, Matt. Or somewhere in between. So if I do this for myself, what's my relationship with my mind? Okay, well, over the years, it's improved. It doesn't run away with itself so much. I do my mindfulness. It's reasonably good. And I think for some years, I would have put it quite close to the you. But increasingly, I'm actually aware there are parts of my mind that are still very runaway. They can go off on a tangent and I can follow them. So I think now I would put it, yeah, sort of more over there somewhere. But that's what my relationship with my mind is. Then what's my relationship with my body? Let's think about that. Actually, I think nowadays it's quite good. It used to be absolutely awful. I never used to listen to my body, but I'm older. I'm in my mid-70s. And if I wasn't listening to my body, I would probably be quite ill, because I'm a very keen gardener, and I'll even climb ladders and prune bushes and things, and I have to listen to my body now. So actually, and funny enough, I'm actually quite happy about being older. I'm not cross with my body. I'm not blaming it. You know, when it says I've had enough, stop and have a cup of tea, I'll go, all right then. So I put it quite close to the you, in the corner where body is. Put my little cross there. And when I've got a new client, I send them this map, and I get them to put a little cross and the date against the little cross. And then as we work, maybe in a few months' time, when they do it again, they'll find that all their crosses have come closer into the center. So then feelings, what's my relationship with my feelings? Yes, I don't get cross with them. I don't really, there's one feelings, which is fear, which can run away with itself. Most other feelings I'm pretty accepting of and welcoming. Feelings can kind of take me over. So again, my little cross as to is it a good relationship? Is it close to my you? And I suppose it's about a third of the way across. And then my relationship with spirit. What's my relationship with spirit? And increasingly, I think this is a thing about getting older, actually. I do listen to spirit, and I do respect, and I listen to it. And I'm really happy that I've got a spirit that talks to me. So I think it's quite close. Okay, thanks, Matt. Shall we get rid of it and come back into the...
Can I make a couple of comments?
Absolutely.
So I use a model similar to this in my coaching, and it can generate all sorts of useful topics to explore, and it's both in the topic, the area that the client is really strong in.
Yes.
So we can build on that, look at what the skills they have are, and why the relationship in that area is good.
Oh, Matt, we've got
Yes.
to admit Karen's obviously dropped off and has come back.
Yeah.
That's just me trying to get in on a better screen.
Oh, okay. Welcome.
Sorry.
Okay. Yeah, carry on, Matt.
As well as generating information about where there's nothing going on, or yes. The client reports an issue. So it can generate positives and negatives, and topics to work through, strengths as well as sketchy bits.
Thanks. Okay, shall we come back into
Yes.
So that's where I start, and that helps the client to understand where they're at. Where are their strengths? Where are their weaknesses? And also helps me, who's never met this person before, to know where are they at? What's really important to them? You know, I mean, they may say, oh no, I don't do body's not my thing, but hey, I'm not bothered about that. I've got problems with my feelings and I want to work with that. So it's like, whatever we go with them, but in our head we go, hang on a minute, they've got a bad relation with their body, that could account for some of the things, but we obviously have to accept what they're saying. But it's a way, and also in a group, I give it, when I run groups, it's a way, which I don't anymore, but I did until quite recently. And it's a way of getting people talking, and then I split them off into groups and get them to do it with each other, which is in fact what we're going to do now. Oh, first of all, are there any questions before we go into a group? And what I suggest you do, I mean, it's not a big exercise, so it's like just have, I don't know, just a few minutes each asking each other as if they were your client, how, what they would say, and then they ask you. But any questions before we do that? No? Okay, so shall we split into...
I think I've done it.
Okay, and Matt, don't forget to unmute, or does it just not happen? Record.
I'll pause the recording now.
Okay.
We had a question, Emma, around,
Yes.
sorry, I didn't raise my hand, around just language around for spirit, thinking that, we all define it in some ways differently, and wondering if you had ways to which you illustrated what you meant by that quadrant for people that might not use that language.
Okay. Yes, I do. And my phrase is, whatever makes your heart sing. If I'm talking with someone who's an absolute atheist or something, I go, okay, so what makes your heart sing? What really lifts your spirits? That's another one, because the term lifting your spirits is a term recognized by atheists and everybody else. So that's a way of getting into it.
When I'm inquiring into that, I use the term connection with all that I am.
Yes.
And if somebody's a sort of atheistic scientific materialist, then I talk about interbeing and fractal connections and and use a language that they're comfortable with.
Yes. Yes, I think that's really important. You go into their language.
So would you say close to God?
No, I would not use the word God unless the person introduced the word God and then we're talking about God, and then I'll talk about God. Because no, if I was using
That's what I meant. You were talking with someone that used that concept.
Oh, well, then I will use that language. Absolutely.
But, yes. And then would you call that quadrant as close to God?
I'm not sure. I tend to say spirit, great spirit, God. I used to call it God, goddess, all that is. But yeah, if it's someone who's really a sort of a very church-oriented person and really wants to talk the God language, then I will. Yes. Yeah.
I wonder, I have a little expertise in this area. I'm a Christian minister. If I said that already, you may limit the discussion by focusing on God, even with people who do have a strong, religion relationship with God, because the spirit is relationship with all that's non-human or not in the room with you. And so, when you say what makes my heart sing, cooking. Yes. And what is the, you know, if I talked about God, I would completely overlook that cooking and gardening make my heart sing. So
Okay, any other questions? No? Okay, brilliant. Good. So, what was it, Matt, we were talking about, and I thought I'd say that. Can't remember now.
Oh, this is what you start with.
Oh, yes.
it's-
The reason I start with this and the next one we're going to do is, and most of my work does not consist of maps, but today's work does. And the reason I always use it at the beginning is it sets the tone for my work. So that's why I always do this at the beginning of working one-to-one or in groups, so that people know where I'm coming from and I get to know where they're at with the whole thing. But most of the sessions we're going to be learning later on, they're usually sort of written question and answer things. They're not these diagram things. So today most of the work today consists of diagrams, but it's just how the thing started. Yes, Karen.
Just one more thing. Was your language, and Matt, if you could repost the document, I switched computers so I don't have it here, but was your language, how close is this aspect? How close are you to this aspect of your being?
Yes, what is the relationship like with this aspect? That's what I talk about. You know, is it if it's a good relationship, you put your cross close to where the you is. If you go, oh no, my mind's out of control, I don't get on with my mind at all, then you put the cross right up in the far corner of this. So Matt, oh, is that the end of that one? And shall we move on to looking at the second map? Okay. Now, right. Okay. Now, this is my second map, which is called The Three Faces of Self. And again, this is not dissimilar to the other one, but it works in tandem for me. Okay. So to me, we have an outer face. It's like, imagine this is us sort of cut through the middle. So on the outside of us, we have a masked self. And our mask, I'm sure you've come across these terms before. Our mask is the face we show to the world. That's the blue part. It's the way we like to be seen. And then the next one in is called the shadow self, and that's the red one. And it's the face we hide from the world. And then in the side is true self. Now, once again, I'll use myself as an example because it's kind of easier for me to do it than just because I've been doing it for 70 years. So, okay, if I was working with someone and they said to me, tell me about your mask self. What's the face you show to the world? Well, again, because I'm older, it's changed. But for many, many years, my mask self was, I wanted to be seen as intelligent, but most of all, I wanted to be seen as kind. I wanted to be seen as a nice, kind person. And that was how I wanted to come over. And I think that's how I did come over. Because the truth is, actually, when we get to the true self, I'm probably quite kind inside, but the masked self is what we develop, how we want to be seen. So it was intelligent, smart, onto it, with it, and kind. So then you go, okay, so that's the face you want people to see. What's the face you don't want people to see? Ah, well, I'm a very anxious person and I don't want people to know that. I'm also a very critical person and I don't want people to know that. And I blame people a lot in my head. I don't blame them out there because, of course, I want to be seen as nice and kind. So I'm not a person who I don't go on about how dreadful people are to each other, but in my head, I'm probably blaming them. And and for many years, I was a very angry feminist and quite anti-men and blaming men for everything and all that sort of thing. So that was my shadow self. But again, I didn't want that to come over. I wanted to come over that I was a nice, kind person. And then we go to the true self. But before we move to the true self, I want to talk about what we as human beings tend to do. I'm going to deviate slightly to talk about a spiritual advisor for a community in Colorado that the community I worked closely with, and they're called Sunrise Ranch. And he's called, actually his name's gone out of my head now, but anyway, they came over to England often and we worked alongside them. I work with the Wrekin Trust in England, a spiritual community. And he talked about primal spirituality. And he says, we come in with primal spirituality. We come in what the poet calls trailing clouds of glory. And that's how we are for the first 7-8 years of our life, unless anything's gone wrong earlier. So we're already our true self. We're coming in this beautiful light being. And then life comes along and tells us we mustn't be like that. So we close down. And because we close down, start to see ourselves as a shadow, all these nasty bits, we start to focus on that. People tell us we're this and that, and then we feel hurt and upset. And so we focus on that. So how the mask comes about is, as teenagers, we don't like what we're feeling because we've already lost true self. So we create this mask, which is socially acceptable. And there's nothing wrong with that. In fact, it's a really important thing to do to get us through life. However, the problem arises when we think that's who we are. When we think we're just the qualities that we have put in the mask. And we then build ourselves a big brick wall between that and the shadow self, because we fear the shadow self. We want to just be seen as the mask. So we build this big brick wall. Then something happens in life, some sort of trauma, tragedy happens, and this is when clients would come to me, and I was a trauma therapist, and I'd go, hey, this is brilliant, because that is never who you were. When you've come in, imagine a journey from the outside of this circle, starting going in towards the center. If you've landed in your shadow self and you feel the rug's been pulled from underneath you and you can't be the person you were, the mask, I say good, because you're part way to getting to the truth. You're part way to your own healing. And so then when we get through the shadow self, we go, well, who was I before all this happened? When I was my true self, what was I? And true self is exactly the same as what Karen was asking me about, what do I call spirit? And it's the same thing, what makes your heart sing? This is when you're your true self, when you're radiant, when you're just giving off, not ego stuff, but just your genuine, joyous, natural self. And some people do it more with an audience. Some people come out more with an audience. Some people come out more by themselves. It doesn't really matter, but whatever's true for you. But this whole thing of the true self is your radiant truth. And when you start to realize that you're not actually either of the other two, but you are your true self, when you get there, that's what this sunshine business is all about. You don't have to work with getting rid of or healing your shadow self, or even getting rid of or healing your mask self. The more you focus on who you truly are, the sun shines through the others and you shine out your truth into the world. And so that's how it is. But you've got to keep going on the journey through the shadow self. You're never going to find the shadow self when you're stuck in saying, no, the mask, that's all I am. Yeah, shall we come back into the and see if we've got any questions?
Yeah, I noticed I've never used a diagram like that in the coaching, but where that something very similar shows up in my coaching is when I always spend quite a lot of time asking somebody who they thought they were going to be and what their dream lifestyle would be, what their perfect life, the one they always thought they were going to have, and that reconnects them with the true self.
Right.
Yeah.
So any questions before we move into, because that is the map that goes with the next piece of work, and we won't break into small groups just with the map, because the map is just a visual of the actual piece of work that we're going to do next. Yes, Karen.
So many questions. How do you talk about the universal self, the greater self? And this is sort of, I assume we're talking more about the individualized self in this map. So, what about the sort of universal self?
Well, to me, when we find our true self individually, that's when we link. That's part of the sun shining. Because to me, if we put loads of these little maps side by side, all these different little three, circles, everybody's mask is going to be completely different. Quite a few people's shadows are going to be different. When you've got the truth of who you are, that's when you're linking with everybody else. We've all got a true self, and that is the universal self links when we're being true self. Even if say I'm an extrovert and you're an introvert, and we're behaving completely differently, but we're linked and we recognize that because we're in that truth of ourselves. Does that answer your question?
I think so. Think about it. Thank you.
Okay. Any more questions before we move on to the deeper investigation of the mask, the shadow, and the true self? Okay. So this is where it would be really good if I could have a volunteer to look at the questions, and I'm going to ask lots of questions about your mask and your shadow and your true self. So would anybody volunteer to answer the questions, and then I can show how it works? And you don't have to do it, it's like, you don't have to expose yourself. In fact, one of the things Matthew and I thought that people who volunteer, if you've got a client who you think, oh, I'd love to use this exercise with them, you can role play them, so I mean, you don't have to expose yourself in a group of people you don't know, or you could do it quite superficially. But you could, it would be good to have. Karen, you'll do it?
I keep talking, so sure.
Absolutely wonderful, thanks. So Matt, would you put up the 3 faces of self writing bit?
Sure.
Okay, right, lovely. So, hi, where's Karen? Can I see? I can't see Karen, she's dropped off the end. Wait a minute,
There's an up arrow and a down arrow.
Yes, if I can, there she is, good, because I've got to see her if I'm talking to her. Okay, can you see me, Karen?
Yes, I can. I can see the screen primarily, but should I look at you primarily?
No, it's fine, look at the screen. So Come, your mask. How does the self like to behave and be seen?
And we're speaking of ourselves in the present moment because
Yeah, it's probably easier.
yeah, there's no other way to do it. Yeah, just how does myself like to be seen? Uh, Loving, playful, wise.
Okay. And what's the feeling associated with the behavior?
The feeling in myself that that behavior generates. Oh, kind of a, I'm relatively pleased with.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. And your definition of life as seen from this place. So when you're being this, actually, hang on, what I usually do, so that is write down a couple of things as you're saying them, so that I can keep referring back. This is a good, so just tell me again, what was the playful?
Said loving, playful, and wise. Ooh, a little bit arrogant.
And wise, okay, yeah, okay,
so
right.
whatever.
So your definition of a life, when you're being playful, loving, and wise, life is, and again, just off the top of your head, you don't.
Life is generative, joyful, connected.
Yeah. Okay. And I am, when you're feeling like this, I'm
a good friend to have.
Lovely. And others are
interesting, endlessly interesting.
Okay. And then how do you respond to life in this mindset? And what we're going to do is we're going to take an example of something that happened, and then we're going to look at how the different three selves probably would react to the same thing. So is there an example of something you did recently that you could actually use for all three examples?
Like working through a conflict with a friend.
Sorry,
working through a conflict.
Working through a conflict with a friend. Okay, so yes, so you're working through a conflict, and you're in this mood. You're playful, loving, and wise. So, how do you approach working through the conflict?
Already recent. I keep trying to call her into dialogue, even though I know because I assume she really wants to, but even though she's slightly avoiding it.
Yeah.
But I do it in a fun, light way that's not stressing.
Yes. So you're keeping it light and fun. Yeah. And let's say supposing it's not working, you just drop it, or what do you? If you're in this mood, you're definitely not in a heavier mood.
Yeah, then I just think, okay, well, you'll come to me when you're. I would just drop it, but actually drop it, as opposed to.
Yeah.
Just I would, let her come to me and not be festering.
Yeah. Okay.
As opposed to how I was festering.
Yeah. So you just kind of cool it, sort of, just let it drop. Yeah.
As if it doesn't quite matter all that. Not that it doesn't matter much to me, but I'm fine until it resolves.
Yeah, I'm fine. Yeah. Okay. Now, what does the self believe? Just in life in general. It's like what's this self's attitude to life, I suppose. Yeah, she believes
this self. She believes that um, uh, well, can you give me a bit more specific?
Uh, I think we've probably covered it really with the life is, I am, others are. That's the general picture. So we won't bother too much about that. Well, in the body, I mean, this is more if we're working with a specific belief that someone's got, and then we can look at how these three parts might react to this specific belief. So we won't bother with that. Where in the body does this self reside? So it's like,
Pretty high up in the chest.
okay. And when you're thinking and feeling like this, I put how old you feel, but what I'm really meaning is what does this, when's the period of your life when you feel this is was typified by this particular self?
Really only
That's,
recently.
sorry?
Really recently.
Currently, okay. Currently. Right, okay. Now, we're going to do the same thing, but from the shadow. So, what's this self's behavior patterns? So, what's the face you hide from the world? What's the bit about you that you'd really rather people don't know, but it's the truth?
Judgmental and depressive.
Okay, right. So, um, so the feeling associated with being judgmental, well, I guess depressive is depressed. Any other main sort of feelings associated with being in the self?
Exhausted.
Yeah.
Okay. Unengaged.
Yeah. So, definition of seen from life in this place. So, you've had a few days and life isn't going your way and you're feeling judgmental and depressive. And you get up and you go, oh, life is
Pointless, so difficult and pointless.
okay. And I am
an idiot.
Sorry, you shouldn't laugh, should I?
No, you shouldn't. I did, but that's because it came so automatically. Or yeah.
Others are
annoying as hell.
Right, now let's go back to, this is why I write it down. If you're using this with a client, do if you write it down yourself, even just scribble, it helps to be able to go back. So you're now working through a conflict with a friend, so it's the same thing. You remember that, oh yeah, this was the day that friend and I were going to get together, but you're in this mood. So working through a conflict. So in the first one, you kept trying to call her into a dialogue, but you were keeping it light and fun. But this is, no, I've got to call her. So how do you approach it from this shadow self?
If I was just in the shadow self, wouldn't at the moment, what's coming up for me is, wouldn't it be nice sometimes to just act from that shadow?
Yes. So you could actually think, how would you behave if you really was trying to tackle this conflict from this angle?
From my shadow self. Oh yeah, so in this moment, that's the invitation. I think I would just would I go over there or write her? I would just tell her how angry that I am and how hurt I am and how this is just so ridiculous.
Yeah. Okay. And then I'm not sure how she's going to behave, but she's probably going to argue with you. So what happens next?
Well, probably it escalates. Well, probably I can be pretty I'm good. I can be fairly good with language, and more than I think she can. So I can sort of, I can kind of be a bit. I can slay people a little bit with words if
Yes,
I really
yes.
am really angry, and she's not as much. So basically, but when I ever have done that, then I feel terrible afterwards.
But I am articulate, and so yeah, so yeah.
And then I can be. Then I think that I realize I went too far, and I was way
I
up.
can go too far. Yeah, and so then after that, you feel worse because you feel guilty.
Yeah.
Yeah. Because you didn't really want to do that. Okay. So we won't bother with the belief one. Where in this part in the body does this self reside? So when you're being like this, where are you in your body?
More in the belly, like fire in the belly, like lower belly.
Right. Yeah. And when you're thinking, feeling, and behaving like this, it's like, again, how old do you feel? I mean, is this like reminding you of something when you were younger, or when's the sort of time of your life when you were most in this self?
Yeah, I think 3 is what comes up.
Lovely, lovely, lovely. Okay. And then, right, let's take a deep breath. Oh. Oh, thank goodness we're not stuck in that one.
Who was that?
I have another exercise where I say, can you please later on in the meeting share the first sheet with the quadrants again? Yes, okay, we will. Right. So imagine that you were first in the good mood with a friend and you tried it, then you had a ratchet argument with her, then you went for a long walk, you didn't meditate, and it's 2 or 3 days later, and you've just had a lovely connection with nature, or with a child, or with your favorite arts and crafts, but you're in a lovely mood and you're feeling connected. So when you're coming from your essence, how would you behave?
Oh, and I fell out there for a minute. The internet dropped out. So basically, you were just saying. You say the preface again?
Oh yes. This is you've had your argument with the friend. Well, you tried the mask one where you just kind of let it roll. Then you got mad at her and then felt guilty. And then a few days later, and you're in a lovely mood. You've had a lovely connection with nature, or with something that you love to do, and you're in a wonderful mood, and you've had a lovely meditate, and you're feeling completely connected and blissed out. So how do you behave when you're really being your true self?
In that situation, or generally?
No, in general. Let's just do
how do you behave in general?
When you're not projecting yourself, you're not, trying to be seen to be anyway, you're just at home having a lovely time doing your very favorite thing to do.
How do I behave? It's hard to see yourself in.
What sort of person are you? People who know you and love you and know you being more than the mask self. It's like, people who know you really well and just think you're great. What would they say? How would they describe who you really are?
I think they would say um, smart, joyful, with some depth, some complexity.
Yeah, yeah. That's okay. And how do you feel when you're really being this true self?
Relaxed.
Yeah, yeah. And definition of life from this place. Life is
Life is what it is, regardless of what I think about it. um, and uh, I live in the country and have been learning to uh, grow and butcher animals. And so for me, I think a lot about life in terms of life is this, very um, gifted through the animal body, um, for a very, relatively short and precarious, and but the gift of being inhabiting the animal body is, so extraordinary.
hmm.
If that makes sense.
So how would you describe your true self? Is I am, in a couple of words, I am.
I am a little tiny soul. I am a little fragment of a universal soul who has arms and legs and a big brain that may or may not be very useful. And um, um, and I'm pretty stoked for this adventure.
And others are.
Others are, though it's very hard to believe they're the same, they are. That I am, that others are,
Yeah.
that I am in no way unique, and that others
Yeah.
others are the same, even though I know that, but I have very tried. It's very difficult to
Yeah.
hold that reality in.
So this self is quite philosophical, isn't it? It's sort of.
Oh, I suppose.
Yeah, yeah. More so, very much more so than the mask. It's more philosophical. Yeah. So let's think about this. So you're being this person, you're in a meditative mood, you're in a philosophical frame of mind. And we're back to the argument, the conflict with the friend. So, how would you approach a conflict with a friend where you're not in the completely light and easygoing self that trying to call her, keep it light and fun, drop it if she doesn't want to, but neither are you in the full on tell her how it is and let her have full barrels. So this is much more philosophical. How do you approach the conflict from the philosophical self?
I think I would write her. Once I'd reached out and she didn't respond, which is what happened. I think I would write a super short, helpful, non-blaming note about just how I'm feeling, and why it's important for me to get together whenever she's ready.
Right. This is sounding, I don't know if you do non-violent communication stuff, NVC, but this is sounding sort of on that ilk. It's sounding,
Yeah.
yeah. And yeah, okay. So you're, yes, that's a sort of more balanced, it seems.
Mhm.
And where in the body does this self reside? So when you really be in this very philosophical
Very mid-chest, very heart.
heart, brilliant. And then I put, is it possible to allow this self to take dominion over the household of local selves. I did some work many years ago with Barbara Marks Hubbard. You may have come across her, wonderful lady. And she wrote a book called Emergence, A Shift from Ego to Essence. And she calls it the household of local selves. So my question is it possible to allow this self to take dominion over the household of local selves? Are you ready for the other selves to take a back seat and let your true self shine through the rest of your personality, illuminating it from the inside, like the diagram of the sun?
Yeah, I mean, I think that's a conscious quest I've been on for many years, of course. There is something satisfying about a certain level of anger or self-righteousness.
Right.
Just in allowing yourself, like the way you have an ice cream. And then you don't eat it all the time, but just when it's you alone in your room, you go, no. And then that's done.
Right.
So I kind of don't really want to give that up.
Yeah. No. It's fair dues. I mean, this is just a way of getting to know these three selves. Hey, so thanks, Matt. Could you get rid of screen share and bring us back into the room? Okay, well, thank you, Karen. That was so kind of you to do that and give us all a wonderful example of how this thing works and how even with the same example, we can behave in three completely different ways. So, any questions? Terry.
This seems like I'm sort of struggling to fit this, and so maybe I'm just a little atypical, or do other people struggle to articulate these things?
No, I think if you've never seriously looked at the face you show to the world and the face you hide from the world, it might be worth sort of even giving yourself a session on each one. You know, we are rather hailing through this. And I find it a really helpful tool to help me see that I'm more than the mask and the shadow. It's like, to me, it's understanding where the inner one comes in. But no, this is quite an in-depth thing, and we may be trying to do the impossible, sort of hurtling through it at breakneck speed.
Okay, I was just curious if people kind of gave you blank looks or cross-eyed looks when you asked some of the questions. And I think actually that I may be atypical, because I mostly don't care what other people think. So there's not much need for a mask.
Right. Yes. I think actually as we grow and change, I mean, God, I did this work 40 odd years ago. I mean, this is, it was something that helped me enormously. Actually, what I'm aware of, Matt, is looking at the time, I've only got another quarter of an hour. Instead of doing breakouts, which could take forever, before we do that, I want to quite quickly move into the last diagram, because I think this is a really helpful little tool and a way to use this whole concept in a really helpful one. I'll try and run through it really quite quickly, because it's called True and False Relationships, and it's while Matt's getting it up, I'll talk about right, lovely. So that's it. That's the true relationship. But can we go up to the false one? Oh no, was that?
That is the.
Oh, that is the false one. Yeah, okay.
Yep.
No, we'll start there. Right, that's fine. So let me talk quickly about person A and person B. You know, we'll say person A is on the right and person B is on the left. Now, person A is your typical person that you meet. they are the people who give me the absolute blank stares and say, what you see is what you get. That's all I am. No, no, no. I'm this, in my case, I'm this nice, kind person. That's who I am. And so they're just the blue layer. They haven't got, or they're unaware of, the two other layers. They're just the blue layer. So if I'm going to go into a relationship with them, the only bit of me they're going to show themselves is the mask. Now, if I'm the one on the left, and I already have gone, oh, well, I'd like to be thought of as a nice, kind person, but actually I'm this really judgmental, difficult person. And so I know I've got a shadow. Now, if you look at the heart and the way it links in this relationship, there is only one problem, and it's me. I'm the only one with a bad self. So it's like, I will readily go, oh, I'm really sorry, I was so judgmental yesterday. And they go, yes, you were, weren't you? But because they're not owning any of their shadow, we're never going to get anywhere because I'm always to blame. And a lot of people on, the person on the left, mainly it's people like therapists and people who think about things deeply. We're only too ready to own our weaknesses. And so if we're owning our weaknesses, we can very easily carry the can for everything that goes wrong in this relationship. And I would imagine some of you have been in it. I mean, often as a parent, we're like this when the kids become a teenager and they're perfect and they know everything and we're the most terrible parent on the planet. And unless the person, the child or the partner or whoever it is willing to see, yeah, they've got a shadow too, they don't always behave in good ways, then this is a very, very difficult relationship to be in, because we, on the whole, will readily claim all the difficulties because we know we're not perfect and we end up being dumped with it. So Matt, if you could scroll down and we can look at what a true relationship is one, or it actually, what I discovered from working with this process is that just because this person isn't owning their own shadow, it's there and I can see it. So I'm not going to buy into being the 100% responsible for all the problems anymore. I'm going to put it like this. And often relationships just won't work like this. I mean, hopefully if it's a teenage child, they're going to grow out of it and they're going to later on go, yeah, I was a bit stroppy, wasn't I? But some people are never going to own their shadows, own the not such nice part of themselves. And we will always be dumped and blamed. So I just wanted to get that bit in because I think it's, I found this immensely helpful. And I have to lay claim to this. This is one of the only bits of genuine work that has completely come through spirit, through me. I've never read this anywhere or anything. This is genuine, my own, sort of work. Yeah, so much. We come back to full screen and then discuss it, because I think, do people find that helpful? And it's something that you may be able to use with a client who's in a bad relationship and you realize that this person is a really good person, but their partner sounds like they are not taking responsibility for their part of what's going on. And so this person is taking it all on. And I find that diagram really helpful. So any questions?
Just want to say, Emma Mary, that in this context, the masks make perfect sense.
Oh, okay, good. I was obviously right to bring it in. Yes, because it does seem that people do. All of us have a way we want to be seen, even if we're not aware. It's just, and then we have parts we'd rather, aren't too visible. I mean, and yes, as we mature, we're far less bothered with it all. But So looking at the time, Matt, we're not gonna have time to break off and do this as an exercise. So what should we see if
Let's chat a little more. I'm interested in Neela's insight from because Neela's a therapist.
Mhm.
And where, if this overlaps with therapy, or is because it's coaching is kind of quite really different.
Yeah, it is and it isn't, because it points to the same, but the method is different. So I find this very insightful in like structured. It helps me to structure the process. So yeah, I was actually I just had a lot of ideas like, oh, I can make mind maps and, you know, create some more psychoeducation on paper. And yeah, so I found it very interesting. I love the last part. You know, it's when things are on paper, it's like another part of us starts to understand.
Yes, yes. A visual. It's a visual
Yeah.
link. I'm very visual.
Yeah, me
and
too.
That's why these a map like that, to me, you go, oh my goodness, it could have taken, you know, hours and hours of discussion to get that.
For sure. Yeah. Yeah. So thank you a lot. Yeah. Does that answer your question, Matthew?
Absolutely. Yeah.
Mm.
I think I've been thinking a lot about the difference between therapy and coaching, what the difference and where the overlap is. And I think with these kind of exercises and the diagrams, people will go to the level where it serves them.
Yeah.
They won't disclose at a deeper level than they have language for or can handle. Which kind of, there's a sort of, when you're doing it as an exercise with a beginning and a middle and an end, there's a sort of self-limiting factor that it goes to the level where it's useful and not too deep.
Yes, yeah.
And Matthew, if you could, in just a sentence or two, how you've been thinking about it a lot, how do you differentiate at a simple level between coaching and therapy?
Coaching's much more forward-looking, and it works on the positives. We'll identify a difficulty or a dilemma, but work from a person's abilities and capacities, existing capacities, and strengthen them, rather than looking back on why they feel like this or how they got here or what happened in the past.
And I was both. I was a therapist for many years, and then I did a coaching training about 25 years ago. And I found it much more, I'm a very proactive person. I'm a very practical person. And I just wanted to be able to have tools to help people and to move people along rather than sit forever talking about their dreadful childhoods, do they?
Yeah.
Which I mean, there's a space for that. That is, you know, I'm not knocking that, but there is a limit to me, and so that's why I didn't move into coaching, because I'm not a businesswoman, and if I was a coach, I have to set up my own business, whereas I was employed by the NHS to work in mental health, so that I was a therapist, so. And it was just easier for me not to be a businesswoman, but the actual work, I much preferred coaching. I want to ask Svetla if you've got any questions or anything, because you've been pretty quiet. Has any of it made sense? Is any of it helpful?
Oh yes, all of it makes sense, and I've been just soaking it in, and it is wonderful. And I love, I'm also a visual person, so all these diagrams have helped me a lot, and I like structure as well, so I just love the way things were presented. They just got in. So yeah, I've been just keeping notes and
Good.
yes,
Good.
really exploring as you go, as you went through with Karen through. I was also exploring it in my mind. I don't know if everybody else did, something similar, but I was also answering myself, like the questions. Yeah.
And what I was going to say was, I'm really happy that if any of you use these tools and then have a hiccup that you hadn't anticipated, or even you're just doing it with yourself and you come across, I'm always open to an email question and I'll answer, because I've been working with all these tools for so many years. So I'm really happy to engage anybody in email correspondence about stuff, or even a one-to-one Zoom. I was going to say Skype. Gosh, that's years ago. I used to do Skype. So I will send everybody these 4 as a attachment. And again, if you have problems, I can always just sort of print them out in the, put them in the body of an email, but they should be all right. And Matt had them all right, didn't you, Matt? So, shall we have a checkout?
I just have one question for the 2 meetings set up. Are they supposed to be the same meeting, just different time for availability sake, or it is going to be something different for the one that is, I think it's earlier in the day that falls in the US, like at 5 a.m. here.
Yeah.
Is it going to be the same?
Well, we had thought it would be different, but I mean, what do you guys say? Can you not come to the morning one? It's a Monday morning.
It's a Monday morning, and I'll do my best to be here because
2 a.m. Sorry.
Oh dear.
Terry, for you is very early. For me, it's 5 a.m., so it's doable.
But also, I could watch the recording.
Yes.
So.
Yeah.
This has been very valuable, Emma Mary. Thank you.
Oh, good. So, I mean, it's the sort of thing you could use, if not on a bit of paper with a client, in your head with one of the people you work with. It could be useful. Because I
already have a client in mind.
Right, yes.
Even though I'm not a therapist, somehow I still have clients.
Yeah. And how was that, Karen, doing it? I mean, it was rather a whistle-stop tour, but
it was interesting. It's always very informative. What I'm thinking about now is, how while I'm do group work and being asked to do coaching, I think the bigger question we all face is, we are facing this collective moment, and how do we bring this conversation into the middle of the room rather than leave it in the purview of the individual trying to make sense of this, how their own relationship to this time of collapse, as if it is a therapeutic issue, because in some ways, of course, it isn't. I mean, in some ways, it's life at this moment, and there's, problematizing it is difficult in itself. So that's just what I'm thinking about.
And I'm really interested if you find any of these tools could be used in that way, and share some ideas. I'm really open to. I mean, I've been, these are tools I've used for 50 years, and it's only really in the last sort of 5. I mean, well, I've been an activist most of that time, but it's only in the last 5 years that things have escalated the way they have. So these are not I'm sharing these here through Matt and the guides, because the guides are the ones who are going to be working with the people, and if any of these tools are useful for working with the people, but these are not specifically for that issue. These are just one-to-one things to help people.
So we could make space towards the end of each session to discuss things like that.
Yeah,
I think. How do we use these? with clients or in a more formal context, and how, you know, what insight or benefit are they in other contexts, you know, group contexts or conversation. I'm always interested to co-learn.
Okay, so let's have a checkout, quick checkout. So how are you feeling, and will you come again?
I would say thoughtful, and I would love to come again, but I will not get up at 2 in the morning, but I will watch the video, or I'll try to. Thank you very much.
Okay. Do you want to pass to somebody, Karen?
Yes, to Svetla.
Yes, I'm filled with gratitude for your offering, Emma Marie. It was very rich. You made the most out of an hour and a half, and I'm very, very grateful I was able to come and that you're sharing all this with us. Thank you. It's very, very beautiful material, rich. Yeah. And I'm passing down to Terry.
I'm feeling curious, excited, and hungry. I haven't had my breakfast yet. Matthew.
I'm feeling relieved that it went well, and I really enjoyed it. So, and I pass to Neela.
Well, curious is a good word. I feel a bit on, like I'm just like, zzz, there's a lot processing. I'm processing, that's maybe the word. Yeah, thank you a lot. It was inspirational.
Thank you. Well, I'm really glad. It's exciting for me because a friend of mine said to me, you know, you can't completely stop work without handing on your expertise. And so I'm delighted to have this opportunity to do it. And there's a lot more where that came from. So thank you all. And especially thank you, Matt, for being so helpful.
My pleasure.
Okay, well, hopefully see you all next week. And I see some of you on Monday.
Bye, everyone.
Okay, bye-bye.
Thank you very much.
Bye, thank you.
Okay, bye-bye.